I first of all, right off the bat, like to thank Tony and Esmeralda for helping out. Tony takes care of the technical aspects of recording everything, and then Esmeralda helps by helping people get in, recognizing who's had questions in the chat. So thank you both very much for that. Welcome to our Lunch and Learn. I'm going to start a share. I'd like to remind everybody that this is recorded. So if you can please mute yourselves when the presenters are speaking, that would be great. And don't worry about writing anything down, because we will have an email that goes out afterwards, and it will have all of the text. It'll have a link to the little slideshow that I have. It will have other links that may come up during the conversation. So you'll find everything within a day or two after. I think, especially as we're here today to talk about the Pachamenteras Peace and Freedom Award, it's appropriate to start in prayer with a prayer for peace. And this prayer comes from Catholic Relief Services. So if you would all like to listen in, as I read the prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Father of Jesus, you who sent your angels to herald your Son's coming with cries of peace, hear our cry now, that your peace may touch all corners of our world. Peace to the smallest child still in the womb. Peace to the most vulnerable of our elderly who long to see your face. Peace to the migrant fleeing war, persecution, hunger, and poverty. Peace to the citizens of those nations to which migrants flee. Peace to those touched by violence and disaster, by storms and quakes and droughts and floods, who struggle to find safety and mercy in the very world you made for us. You who called all peacemakers blessed, help us forge peace in your name. Peace among nations, peace among neighbors, peace among families. When we look back on this time, may we recall it as the time we all heard the angels cry and worked together to reveal that peace to all, a peace worthy of God born into the world. Amen. Father, Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. I'd like to start the Lunch and Learn with just a little bit of audio. And I don't think I'll need to give you much of an introduction, because I think that you'll recognize the voice of the speaker. So here we go.
I think in a real sense that in presenting this award, you honor the hundreds and thousands, yea, even millions of people who are engaged in this mighty struggle for freedom and human dignity in this country. Many of them you don't know. They are those anonymous, faceless individuals who are working tirelessly and unrelentingly to make the American dream a reality. And I'd accept this award for those people, for those heroes who will never have their names in Who's Who, and who may never be mentioned in the newspapers, but they are the real heroes of our struggle.
I'm guessing that most of you recognize that as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He was an early recipient of the Pachamenteras Peace and Freedom Award. At the Social Action website, you'll find a link to a page for the Pachamenteras Award, which has a link to a history page. And you'll find all of the recipients there, a list of them, and then any artifacts that we have for each recipient. It might be the program from the award ceremony. In some instances, we're very fortunate that we were able to get video, or as in this case, audio. So if there is someone that you are interested in hearing more about, especially those who had an opportunity to speak for themselves on either video or by us having a copy of their speech, I would suggest you check out that website, and that will be included in the follow-up email. The Pachamenteras Coalition is an interfaith group that meets to discuss candidates and select those who receive the Pachman Terrace Award. And as you can see, it is a very diverse group, as it should be. Dr. Lisa Killinger is a professor at Palmer College of Chiropractic in Davenport, and she has been in many, many leadership roles. She's been with World Affairs Council of the Quad Cities, Muslim Community of the Quad Cities Senior Olympics. From what I understand, she has quite a busy schedule, and she has graciously agreed to be here today because another role that she has is serving on that coalition and helping to select the awardees. She's going to talk with us a little bit about the process that they go through and how they look at the nominees. So Dr. Lisa, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All righty. And I don't know if people can see me okay. Thank you so much for inviting me. And it's very, very special to me to get to serve on this committee. Who knew that a woman from Bettendorf who happens to be Muslim would ever get to sit at the table with Jewish, Catholic, Buddhist and other people of all sorts of Christian denominations to get the honor to select the Pachman Terrace Award recipient. And you all heard the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., which it was very moving for me to hear that little piece. I wished that I had been in the room when that award was being given. What an amazing thing that would have been. I would have been 5, so they probably wouldn't have let me in. But anyway, we've also awarded John F. Kennedy and Saint Mother Teresa and Desmond Tutu and Cesar Chavez, Lech Walesa, and John Deere, Thich Nhat Hanh, and the Dalai Lama, to mention just a few of the many, many, many recipients of this award. So certainly it isn't reserved as an award given to Catholic individuals, but it's an award given to those who stand out in the world of peace and or justice. So our committee is about as diverse as the awardees that I mentioned. Our committee, like you mentioned, is an interfaith committee, and we meet. Well, I wanted to just say that when in our last board meeting, they said, Lisa's gonna represent us at this lunch and learn. And they said, how long has it been? I said, well, probably about 10 years. Everybody that had been on the committee a long time said, well, you were here before I was here. It's got to be over, we eventually came to that it was about 20 years or 18 years. I don't know. Time flies when you're having fun. But behind the scenes, that means that we meet about 12 times a year, sometimes a few close together, close to the actual event of the award. And in the off season, after we've just given an award, we start afresh at pitching ideas for who's out there doing good works that we should consider. And it is a wide range of people. The people that I read you the names of, they come from many different faiths. We've had Muslim recipients. We've had, recipients that I don't know if they would even say their faith, but they're just out there doing the good works. One thing that I learned from being on the committee is that the nominees that come to the level of being seriously considered for the award get sent to the diocese. And I don't know if it's through the bishop's office or through some higher up, even beyond that they vet the candidates and see to make sure that these candidates don't have something in their history which would be very, I want to say, incongruent with the Catholic values that are espoused, because this award is sort of overseen by the diocese. And so that to me was something I didn't know anything about, and I wouldn't have known unless I had been part of the committee. So they do make sure that there's no value that's been they haven't murdered anyone, clearly, things, whatever's in your past. And there's people that are great people that have had a past, I guess. So they do vet those candidates. But it literally, to me, is very amazing, because I wouldn't know half the things, there are many candidates that get put forward that I knew nothing about. And I learn in this process through somebody at the table, among all of those people that sit around the table, maybe a representative from Quad City Interfaith, or a Jewish member, or myself, or somebody from the Catholic faith, or a representative from Augustana. They may bring forward someone that they've really learned about, that's being a leader in peace and justice around the world, and bring it forward. They bring information and a bio and a little history about them. So we all learn around the table. And I find that very, very fascinating. And then we may choose because of, we may push someone forward to the next level of consideration because there's an opportunity. Maybe that person is going to be touring through the United States, and it's a rare opportunity to catch them while they're here in the United States. Or maybe we have a situation where they're being invited to one of the local universities, and we have the chance to piggyback on that and, of course, save some funds, since we would share the costs of bringing that speaker. All of those things, these pragmatic things, I again would have never known about if I hadn't served on this committee. But it's so wonderful to have, say, 10-ish people around the table with their fingers on the pulse of peace and justice around the world, who can bring forward individuals that the other 8 or 9 might not have known about, and then to really move them forward through the through the consideration process. It's sometimes once in a while, there's a little bit of a scuffle, but most of the time we are happy with all of the candidates and wish for we could give multiple awards, but we choose on those basis of pragmatic issues and also on the basis of their body of work, and then make sure that they're vetted and have passed a muster with the diocese, and then can go forward in the inviting of that candidate. And sometimes the invitee, without knowing, they'll say, well, no, it's going to cost you $30,000 to bring me. And then we're like, well, it's beyond our reach. So we'll consider another candidate. And if you ever wish to do something like this, gratis or for a smaller amount, we have a small stipend, but it's not certainly in that ballpark. So there are many things that come into the process. And I would be interested too in having questions that people might want to ponder. But I do want to say that once in a while, there's a little bit of a scuffle. Like there is a candidate who's done great work maybe towards peace in the Middle East, but maybe they've said something in their past, or they have a bent that is not okay with perhaps the Jewish member on the committee. And that will then create a situation where we have to discuss and see, is pushing this candidate forward worth harming the relationships of the committee members? And sometimes we decide to set aside a candidate for the peace on the committee as well, but because there's maybe a difference of opinion about their appropriateness for this award from different perspectives. So we definitely try to look at all the perspectives of the people on the committee, which, like I say, includes people of many faiths and many backgrounds, and decide accordingly then. So that's all. I know you wanted me to have a brief introduction, and I'm happy to answer questions about other things, but that's just a little taste of what it is to sit on the committee. By the way, it's a process that takes many, many months to get from discussion of a first introduction of a candidate through all of the discussion of the committee, the vetting, and then going through to the next steps of making the invitation and having an acceptance is usually oftentimes a 3 to 6 month process. And then we plan the event of giving the award.
So Dr. Killinger, then is it a requirement then that there's 100% consensus, or are you looking for a majority of the committee members?
Right. We have, in my time there, had consensus on the candidates, and all of the candidates that we brought forth, except for the one that I mentioned created a little bit of a kerfuffle, and that I'm not even going to say if the committee went ahead and then lost the a member off of the committee because they weren't comfortable with it, or whether we set the candidate aside and kept the member. I don't even think it's worth mentioning, but that's something that we try to get 100% consensus.
Are there any questions from anybody else at this point? You'll have another opportunity to ask, and don't forget you can put those in the chat box if you would like.
And I will say that it's not always that we give the person the award in person. I don't know if your class or your group knows that, but we have given the Dalai Lama the award at his place where he greets people. I don't know what you would call it. But we've had the bishop and another member of our committee go along with to present the award in person. We've had also an award that we gave to an individual in France because they were quite elderly and weren't going to travel here, but we had that opportunity as well. So we have sometimes gone to the person and then made a video that we were able to play at the award ceremony. And then other times we've had the great blessing, like you got to hear from the tape, of Reverend Martin Luther King being in person, in having, perhaps I wasn't there, but the Archbishop Desmond Tutu be in person, and Cesar Chavez. I mean, it's a big deal. And our Quad Cities, I think it's one of the best kept secrets. People don't realize the level of people that they can go see receive this award here in our little Quad Cities.
I would agree. Having perused that list a few times over the past couple of weeks, it's a lot of history. A lot of history made its way to the Quad Cities.
Absolutely. I can't see the chat. So if I see there's a couple of, I believe, in chat things, but because I'm on my phone, I can't go back and forth too readily to look and see if there's a question for me.
No questions yet. Just to comment that the being able to listen to Dr. Martin Luther King's acceptance speech was very, very meaningful for a couple of people. So.
Yes.
And I would absolutely encourage, go out and peruse the list, because even though we may not have video or audio, we do have a lot of the acceptance speech text. And it's some very powerful words.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, we'll have another opportunity to ask questions of Dr. Killinger, but I'm going to go ahead and just bring up another bit of our presentation, which when we decided to focus on the Pachimenteros Award for this Lunch and Learn, one of the things we thought about is that the work of working for human dignity, working for human rights, that is the work of peacemaking. And we wondered what motivated people, what drew them to that work, because for many, it's not an easy path. It can be a very challenging life to live, dedicating yourself to others. Very rewarding, but also very challenging. So we did reach out to some of the past recipients to ask what it was in their lives that motivated them or inspired them. And we did get some responses back. So many of you may have heard of Sister Helen Prejean. If you've seen the movie Dead Man Walking or read the book, you would recognize her name. She has been a tireless advocate for working against the death penalty and working for those who are incarcerated. When we reached out to her, she said that she was inspired by people who encouraged her to look at not just charity, not just doing works of charity, but to engage in working for human rights and systemic justice. The book that is on the screen right now, River of Fire, is actually a prequel to Dead Man Walking. It talks about the journey that she took getting to the point of becoming that tireless advocate. So if you have an interest in a more detailed explanation of why she chose to do what she did, that would probably be a really great place to start. And she was our 1998 Pachimenteros Award winner. I myself was very fortunate to meet Monsignor Maudet when I first began volunteering at the Social Action Office for the diocese. And he was kind of a very inspirational figure, just sitting in a meeting with him. You always knew he was constantly thinking about and working for others. Unfortunately, he passed a few years back, so I wasn't able to ask him directly, but when I looked at the program for his award ceremony, right there in the first paragraph, it talked about what inspired him. And it was watching his parents practicing social action and social justice during the Great Depression. Monsignor Maudet was one of the first diocesan social action directors in the nation. And he actually led the Catholic Campaign for Human Development, the national office, for quite a few years. During that time, he developed this concept of the 2 feet of social ministry. He always believed you needed to be able to walk with both feet. You needed to be able to provide for people with works of charity and also to work for systemic change, to address the root causes of the problems. He was tireless, and I'm paraphrasing here, but one of his final messages prior to his passing was telling someone, get to work, something he truly believed in. And the words that spoke to me from his acceptance speech, he said, I think this award is not about me, it's about all of us and what we've been able to do together over the years. And also it's about how much we have left to do. Did I hear a question?
I just wonder if I could add a comment. This is Lisa Kellinger. It was so incredible to get to have these Pacem in Terris meetings at the diocese, because what it meant was we get to eat sometimes in the presence of the priests or individuals that work or live there. And so I got to meet Monsignor Maudet several times, and he sat and ate lunch with us one time. It was one of the most moving things of my life. He's my definite favorite priest that I've ever met. And he really walked the walk through his life and had an overwhelming sense of peace around him. And he's one of those people that you wanted to be in his presence. And I feel so honored that because of my role as a member on the Pacem in Terris committee, I got to sit with him and have lunch and just see him and interact with him like he was my, long lost brother or something. So it was really, really wonderful.
I would agree. He was just a very, very special person and made such a difference in so many lives. He was actually very involved in the formation of several organizations that would be familiar to people in the Quad Cities, such as the Center for Aging Services, and also one that's very near and dear to my heart. He was a co-founder of Project Renewal with Sister Concetta Bendicente, so he holds a very special place for me. So Father John Deere was our 2010 Pacem in Terris Award winner, and he has been an advocate for peace and nonviolence for decades. He talked about, in his response, he talked about being inspired to work for peace and nonviolence from being a child, especially after the assassinations of Dr. Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy. And he talked about after he decided to become a priest, he went to Israel to see where Jesus had lived. And I'll read to you a little bit of what he said. He said he saw jets swoop down over the Sea of Galilee and drop bombs and kill people just miles away. At the very place where the nonviolent Jesus long ago taught, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for justice. Blessed are the peacemakers. Love your enemies. He decided after that experience that he was going to spend his life working for peace and justice, and he says he is still trying. I was very fortunate to actually attend the ceremony for Dr. Widad Akri. She won the award in 2017, and she is a human rights activist. She's of Kurdish descent. And so in her life, she experienced firsthand the pain and suffering inflicted upon Kurds in Iraq by the government. And she documented much of that and spoke up against it and speaks up for others throughout the world who are also experiencing violence and persecution. And she provided a really compelling response where she said there were these 7 factors that influenced her decision. And I won't read the whole thing, you'll get a copy of it, but I just wanted to highlight a few things. First of all, as I said, she did experience firsthand what was going on in Iraq before she fled with her family. And she said that growing up surrounded by injustice and wars taught me all I needed to learn about the importance of justice and peace. The dehumanization embedded in carrying out grave violations of human rights on a regular basis was undermining the human spirit and eroding human dignity. And another piece, though, that also spoke to me when I read it was when she talked about the awareness of the duality of life. I know that lately I feel a bit overwhelmed by all of the violence that's occurring throughout the world, in Ukraine, in Afghanistan. The latest report on climate change from the UN, it can all feel a little crushing at times for me, and I suspect for other people. And Dr. Akri said, being aware of the good and the bad in life convinced me I had to keep going. It is important to remember that there is beauty in every tragedy. And that beauty is only possible to be gleaned if we all join hands and work harder than ever for a better future, for the sake of the next generations. And that brings us to our current award winner, Sister Norma Pimentel. She will be awarded the 2022 Pachamenteras Peace and Freedom Award on Thursday, April 21st at 7 p.m. It will be at Christ the King Chapel at St. Ambrose University campus in Davenport. It's open to the public, it's free of charge. If you have an opportunity at all to attend, I would highly encourage it. And Sister Norma has been serving asylum seekers as executive director of Catholic Charities of the Rio Grande Valley. So she is working with people on the border, on both sides, both on the US side and the Mexico side. And very fortunate that she sent a video response. So I'm going to let you hear what she wanted to say about her beginnings in her own words.
As we are growing up, most of us grow up wanting to be somebody, maybe a doctor, a teacher. I grew up knowing I love art. I enjoyed everything about it, wanted nothing more than to follow it as my path in life. I knew in my heart I was pursuing my dream. It wasn't until I came across God in my life that I discovered the true path in my life, one that led me to discover who I am, who God was calling me to be. My life changed totally. I came to experience God's loving presence burning within me and making me see and care for the most vulnerable and most fragile and broken innocent victims. Victims from those who had no respect for the dignity of human life. I allow myself to be led by God, to be his hands and his feet, his voice in defense of innocent victims of violence. This became my mission, my way of life, bringing justice by restoring human dignity. Today, I encounter families at the border who are suffering terribly. Yesterday, I came across this little girl who has been living in a small little tent with her mother at the camp just across the bridge in Reynosa, Mexico. She was buying a piece of chicken. I asked her, "Is that for you?" And she answered, "It's for both my mom and me." It was one piece of chicken. I asked her, how much was she paying for it? And she answered me, 80 pesos. that was about $4. The reality at the camp of corruption is terrible. It's really bad. The little money that her mother is able to make while at the camp, it all goes to buy little things like one piece of chicken. That's all they can afford. The families are in need of our care and attention. When I speak, I help their pain and suffering be visible to the world, to help us all acknowledge their suffering and to work toward a comprehensive plan that addresses immigrants and the proper care for all of them. We must care for all humanity, especially the most vulnerable and the most fragile in our world. Those who are left out, easily disposed, looked upon as a problem. Everyone must be part of our social tapestry in humanity. I believe this is the work of peace building in our world today.
So quite the impressive list. This is just a tiny, small subset of those who have been nominated and received the award. So I wanted to get to some of the things from the chat. Kent Ferris wanted to make sure that we mentioned that Dr. Killinger has brought a sense of peace to the committee all these years and that they're very grateful for that. And Moxie Hopkins wanted to let us know that we have actually had requests from the public to remove individuals that were past recipients, mostly for political reasons. We've not done that, but have given the person who made the request an opportunity to see the totality of the awardee. And Kent Ferris is encouraging people to bring children and grandchildren to the ceremony. He said his children have met Sister Simone Campbell and Cardinal Ramazzini, to name but a few, and it has been amongst his most treasured moments. And I would definitely second that. Did anyone else have a question or comment that they wanted to make?
Is it okay if I make a comment?
Absolutely.
If you prefer, I can certainly type it into the chat, but I just wanted to say that just hearing Sister Norma and the work that she does, it really underscores to me the importance of bringing people to hear her and to try to all of us individually get the word out, because I think a lot of people like yourself, you mentioned that it can be overwhelming, all of the bad news, and people have been just washed over with negativity and anger about the very polar way we look at our southern border. And it's been so highly politicized, but at the heart of it, it's people. And we need to hear from somebody who's been there, somebody who's not there in a political capacity, somebody who's not there for any other reason than to serve, and to learn about the situation on the ground there from someone who doesn't have a hidden agenda. I think this will be a very valuable thing for those who struggle in their heart with all of the anger around the issue of our southern border. And then also too, it would just help people to see another perspective and to think of that perspective maybe as our fellow humans that are vulnerable and in need. So I think it's a really, really great thing to attend the ceremony and hear more from Sister Norma.
I would agree, and I'd like to echo one piece of what you said, that I was listening to one of the Georgetown University webinars, and they were talking about what's going on in Ukraine. And early on in the conversation, someone mentioned the number of people who have left the country, the millions who have left the country. And one of the next speakers suggested that rather than listing those big numbers, talk about the people, because each of those numbers is a person. There are families, there are couples, there are individuals, there are babies that have just been born who are being forced to make that trek. And it's easy sometimes to lose sight of the people behind the numbers. So We did have a suggestion from the chat box. Matt suggested that the video we're making today should be documented and used as information for school children and about Afghan and Ukrainian immigrants. They need to know of the great examples that have been given in this award. Right on, Matt, agree with you 100%. And then we had Bev ask why Congressman Chris Smith been nominated for the fight. Why, I think it may have been, Bev, that you were asking, why hasn't Congressman Chris Smith been nominated for his fight against human trafficking? So I'm thinking that she's suggesting someone that you may want to consider down the road. And Nikki's asking, is there a shareable graphic to start advertising the event on social media yet? And Nikki, I would say yes. There's a flyer that's available, as well as I believe there's a smaller graphic on the diocesan social action page. Esmeralda, you can either back me up on this or not, but would we be able to send that to Nikki so that she could share it on social media?
Yes, and it's also in our Facebook, diocesan Facebook page as well.
Thank you. Well, a couple of things occurred to me ahead of the lunch and learn, and one of them was what if you noticed any common themes among the awardees that we've discussed, or if you're aware of past awardees, if there are certain themes about what occurred in their lives that led them to do the work that they did. Or if you, any of you, and not to put anybody on the spot, but if anybody there would want to share briefly what has motivated you, what makes you want to do the work that you're doing for justice.
If I could say one theme in knowing the candidate list, the vast majority of them, just like Dr. Widad, who you shared her little video, the vast majority of them have experienced violence themselves. Dr. Martin Luther King, you know, and others, certainly there's many on our list, and some of them that were from the Middle East and other places. They've seen or themselves witnessed or been a victim of violence. And I think that people have a fork in the road that they can take when they see darkness. They can go into that darkness and they can spend their life in a very angry place, really, really just being negative and angry. And then they can also take that fork of the road that leads them, like our current nominee or not awardee sister mentioned to us, that when God came into her life, she really realized what she wanted to do and how that drove her forward. But some people, for either their faith or for general reasons, they notice that they need to go towards the light and go towards doing good action. And there is a great book about this, and I'm gonna forget the name of the book. I'll get it to you later in the conversation. I'm thinking of the Eboo Patel book, one of the first ones that he wrote, that was about that fork in the road when people can choose to go towards doing bad things or doing good things. And it's a really good, I think it's Acts of Faith is the name of the book, but it's a really great book about that theme, about doing peace work and social justice work, or doing the opposite, which is to just be angry and violent. And so it's a great book, Eboo Patel's Acts of Faith.
Okay, thank you. I will include that information in the follow-up email as well. I noticed that Esmeralda did put the award information into the chat, and then it says that the Women of the Pachimenteros Award. Oh, okay. I'm aware of this. Loxie and Sister B, who are both on today's session, have presented on women who have won the Pachimenteros Award. They have a presentation that they have done. And then it's a very remarkable group of spiritual leaders. So
I'm going to say, I think when we did that presentation, that some of the most fun that we had was, as we're talking about these individuals, remembering when we met them. which was really cool. And Sister B in particular has met a number of the women that received that award. Sister B, you want to comment on that?
Okay, if I can get myself unmuted. Well, I think that it has been just a real honor to have had the experience. And I guess the one that comes to mind the most was really fun was being asked to go with the nuns on the bus when Sister Simone Campbell started that. And it was right at the time that we had nominated her for the Pachamanteras Award. And so that was also at the time that the religious women's orders were taking a lot of flack from the male hierarchy, I guess I could say. Anyway, so I was asked to go with the, when the bus was in Iowa, and I think it was the first trip that they made. But anyway, just being on there with Sister Simone and then ending up in Davenport at the end of the trip when she received the award. And it was just, that was just really, really special. So it's, and with all of them, it's just a very much of an honor and something that dwells within that helps to promote people thinking in terms of how can I live the gospel more fully and take part in peace and justice works.
I think one thing we got to hear was often Father Moddett knew almost all of the recipients from early on and had worked with them at some point, which was really amazing, you know, hearing his stories. For instance, he knew Dorothy Day, which is like amazing to me to, because Dorothy Day is like one of my heroes that I think, wow, you know, there's a woman that led such a tragic, I think, life and early on that turned her whole life around to follow her faith and her care for the poor. I mean, that was really, she's a really impressive person. I look at each one of these people and I'm just like amazed at the things that they've done. You know, every single one of them has been controversial in some way because there's always someone that has a reason they don't like that particular person. For instance, Sister Norma, there is people that are critical of her for helping immigrants. But I think when you're doing work of justice, there's always someone that's not going to like you very much.
Absolutely.
Kent Ferris shared in the chat that a college student asked Kim Bobo a secret to success in peace and justice, and she responded, stay in one place for 10,000 hours in order that you can know enough about your organization's undertakings that you too can make a contribution. So that sounds like a good one to me. I always had hoped that, or wished that I had been able to meet the Hennessy sisters, because I felt that they were just so inspirational for two women and two women religious to be that bold and brave and to end up in jail because of their beliefs, but to continue speaking out in spite of it. I wish that I had been around and could have met. I didn't reach out. I'm trying to remember which sister is still living, but I thought, you know, at the age of 90 something, I think you've earned not having to respond to an email. So I didn't reach out to ask for a quote for this, but I always considered them extremely, extremely inspirational.
They were very cool when we used to have social action conferences once a year in Grinnell, where was it? Newton is where we had them. And they used to come every year to those conferences, and what terrific, fantastic women. I mean, they were not shy little wallflowers. They were really outspoken, very cool, but in a very faithful way. Sister B, did you know them?
Yes, I had met them a couple of different times, and yeah, just fun and
Yeah.
just life-changing kinds of encounters. So yeah, very good.
Kent commented that Thich Nhat Hanh's contribution is remarkable in that he helped shape Martin Luther King Jr.'s understanding of the Vietnam War. And so he pointed out that in many instances, recipients have taught each other. And
I think that when he got the award, that one of the coolest experiences was having the people from the Buddhist Center at our Pachman Terrace Award, and actually did things like taught us how to breathe and be peaceful. I still use that.
definitely good things to know.
Yeah.
Well, I was really impressed with the responses that we got and with what I read at the Pachman Terrace website from the recipients. How many of them, were very humble. It was in no way, shape about them. You know, they just, it was the work of all of us. And so not only did they give credit to people who, as Dr. Martin Luther King said, were not going to show up on the evening news, but they also, in a way, were calling them back then, because it was saying it takes more than just me. It has to be a large gathering of us. That was one of the things that Dr. Acre said in her response, is that it takes all of us. We all have to. And I also believe Father John Deere, same thing in his response. So that you see that repeated. You know, we all have an obligation. We all, but not only do we have the obligation, we all have the ability.
If anyone's interested, Father John Deere, if you follow him on Facebook, he has lots of peace building seminars that are free to go to. I've attended several of them. Very, very interesting. Also, if you follow him, he gives a bit of history on people that have been friends of his that have also been recipients of the Pachman Terrace. So I would encourage people to follow Father John Deere.
I don't have his Facebook account, but I do have the link to his website for those that will be in the notes that will come out. His response was great because it was fairly soon after I sent the initial question, and he said in his response, basically, just let me sit down right now and tell you what I think. And that's exactly what he did. It was definitely not, you know, he wasn't sitting trying to polish things or, you know, obviously it was something he felt strongly about and could speak about with his heart right away. So it was a neat response. Okay.
I have to interject if I can.
Mhm.
John Deere has been my mentor for over 20 years and has taught me more about Jesus than anybody in my whole life. So I feel like anyone who listens to his Zooms or reads his books, or maybe you'll get a little tired of him saying the nonviolent Jesus, but that's what he says. And he's taught us all very, very much how to be nonviolent. So I'm just putting in a little plug for him.
He has, I may be off by a couple, but I think he has around 35 published books. So many to choose from.
I think one of the best is Questions of Jesus, which seems to be my personal favorite, but it's the questions that Jesus asks all through the Gospels, and he does a little essay on each one of them that is really very thoughtful. I mean, I don't think you can come across the questions when you're reading the Bible without realizing that he did a nice little essay on what happened there and who he was speaking with and so forth. So
Thanks, Lee. I'll include that in the notes for people. I'll point them in that direction. It's always good to have a personal recommendation, especially when you have so many to choose from. So thank you. Kent wanted us to point out that within the last few years, that in addition to the Pachimenteris Award, there has been the One Among Us Award to recognize people a little bit closer to home who are doing the work. Iowa Wins, if you're not familiar with them, it's an organization in Mount Pleasant working with immigrant families there. And they had the ICE raid, gosh, Kent, was it 5 years ago? I think 4 years ago. And Iowa Wins was in existence before that, but then they really spun up and became a really strong advocate and support for the immigrant families in Mount Pleasant. Now, also, I know Nora Dvorak, who was a longtime volunteer within the diocese and very involved with combating human trafficking, was also one of the recipients. Oh, and another book recommendation, Kent says John Deere's Memorial of Paul Farmer in America recently brought him to tears. Oh, in America, so it's not a book, it's in the magazine America, Kent, correct? So, and I don't have that one, but if anybody has a copy, or if you can find it in the local library, you might want to check that out. Any other questions or comments from anyone? Okay, well,
I wanted to share something that I've been wrestling with the whole time, and I love the Pachimenteris Award, and I feel very proud that our diocese is part of honoring so many of these great peacemakers. And I feel really blessed to have journeying with many of the folks that are on the list of honorees, especially Father Mark Modick, who is so near and dear to me. And I was, I realized it's tough work for the committee. And I caught Loxie's comment earlier, which I really respect, about, there's people who, for political reasons, for instance, want to say, well, what's that person still doing on the list? When you asked before, though, about, sorry, this does trouble me, about themes, so much of it is, support for the poor and marginalized and the vulnerable people. And so I'm troubled with the remainder of Jean Vanier on the list. Based on what we know of his life, yes, a great body of work, the totality. And I realize that this is not a canonization. This is just an award for great peacemakers. I'd respectfully ask the committee to consider maybe transferring that to L'Arche, the group that he supported. It would still honor the work for those people, but optically, I really struggle with that, and I just wanted to share that honestly. Thank you.
thank you, Pat. And I know that we have at least two members of the committee on here, so I'm sure that they'll take your words into consideration and maybe discuss it. So, anything else? Okay. All right. Well, I would like to thank Dr. Lisa Killinger so much for being here and offering your perspective on the important work that the committee does. And I would also like to thank everybody else who has been here listening today. We will have a lunch and learn in May, the first Thursday of May. Wish I would have looked up that date, but don't have the topic nailed down yet. So just be watching your emails, and that will be coming out to you in a few weeks. Hope everybody gets through I don't know about the rest of you, we had snow here this morning. So get through the little bit of snow and cloudy weather, and hopefully we'll all have a great weekend. So thanks, and hope to see you next month.
And also, Amy, this is Jean. Right now, they're doing the vote. I think we're about to have our first Black woman as a justice, Supreme Court justice.
Okay,
It's happening right now, the vote. So that's pretty exciting. Talking about justice, it moves slow.
right, definitely.
That's all.
All right, well, everybody, you can probably catch that on just about every TV channel at this point, is my guess. So,
Yes,
right.
you can. Okay.
all right, thanks, Jean.
You bet.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.